Let's thank God. Dear Lord God, we're grateful for a beautiful day. We're still thankful for it. Enjoyed our lunch. We'd ask that you would bless the time on covering affection to our children and also adjusting to them growing up. We'd ask that you would bless the final bits. In your son's name, amen. Affection is probably a situation that everybody says, I don't need help with this. We all know what it is. You hug your kid, you cradle the baby, you do things that show enjoyment of the child, you tickle them and you roll them around on the bed. Everybody knows those sorts of things are affectionate. And we're not going to deny that. It's not really about, though, how many times you hug your kid. We know that a lot more rests on this than merely you having a good time with your kid. It's not, you don't want to have your affection in the first place be a manipulation you're working on the kid to make them unsuspectingly like you. You're being affectionate because you're nice. You like your kid. And you have to ask yourself a question: Am I nice? I am not the soul of empathy. I have been accused by myself sometimes of being a sociopath. But that doesn't excuse you if you're one of the sociopaths. You still have the Lord's responsibilities to achieve, and that's loving your children. It tells you in Titus, I think it is, here in that first paragraph, teaching the younger women to love their husbands and children, to love their husbands and children, to be sensible, chaste, domestic, kind, and submissive to their husbands, that the word of God may not be discredited. Things rest on this that are bigger than merely how many times you hug your kid. Or whether you hug all your kids equally, and you get to that conversation when they're in their precocious stage of which one of us do you like the most. And we'd always point at Davis because he's going to make something of himself. But then you'd have to, when your daughter's in tears, you point at her, I would lie to all my relatives and tell them they were my favorite. And they knew I was lying, and they still cashed the check. So it was. I think those are elements we know hang over this. But to think that the work of the gospel hangs on how well a mother loves her husband and children. That's one of the elements that would discredit. Oh, we were joking about it. Not joking. We're talking about, I think, last night about pastors' kids and missionary kids as a phrase meaning worst kid in town. Now, my children were all pastors' kids. And you also know that failure to do this, failure to have the relationship with them, and this is very important, famous pastors have disobedient, anti-God children. Now, there is so we're looking to break this down a little bit more seriously than you like. The father likes to roughhouse with his son. You like to give them that kind of attention, and live long and prosper. Do those things, but it's the task of pleasure to the child out of communication of your care, an attentiveness, which is your love for them. And we are called in many ways. I have a verse here that says, when Christ says, let the little children come unto me, do not hinder them, for to such belongs the kingdom of heaven. I've got to have, I'm well known to not be a fan of children, of your children. And some of your children give me literally a pain. I get a shooting pain that runs from the tip of my jaw up the right side of my head to right here on the top. Some kids, not all kids, some kids. I won't tell you if your kid's one of them. And I don't know what it means. I just might be, I have a tumor or something. So I'm not natural that way, but I also know the instructions of God don't give me any special dispensations to not attend to the children, not show them affection throughout, after church, during fellowship time. In our church, we have a lot of kids in the kid, and I try to get to know all the little kids so that they know they can exchange pleasantries and be teased by the pastor. Because the children they're the bottom of the gene pool. They're the bottom feeders. They are the lowly, and we're to associate. It says, do not be haughty, associate with the lowly. And that's what the disciples had done about the kids. Remember, the kids were coming up to Jesus, and the disciples were getting all theological about things. And, none of this, run away, you small ones. And the conversation with children is not really great. But we still have a task to accomplish and a measure in us to get at that finds a way to attend to them with kindness and grace, and especially your own kids. Because we know that it says on discipline, out of Hebrews, for the Lord disciplines him whom he loves and chastises every son whom he receives. We had a big fight at Drones last week. I think it was last week, where one of the members of the club was arguing that discipline was not loving. The whole room erupted.
Corporal punishment.
Yeah, corporal punishment was spanking was not loving. He did not live. What you're doing and what the circumstance is. I'm sort of throwing a bunch of things in one day and a bit about ultimate constructions of your world and how you think of yourself. And once you realize what you think of yourself and what you ought to be, how do you adjust what you are to what you ought to be so that you participate in this naturally with your discipline, with your affections, with your assessments of your godliness and your spirituality. All of those things ought to be plotted out. And the thing is that affection from you is an important thing if it comes from someone higher than they. The children are not just as pleased with a friend, rolling around on a trampoline with a good friend of theirs. There's affection, there's rough and tumble. There's something different about dad doing it with them. It comes from an adult who's in charge and who has foregone greater attachments than you. There are, a husband should be closer to his wife than he is to his kids. A wife should be closer to her husband than to her kids. But then when your kids gain the closeness, gain the attention, gain the affection, they know whence it came. The idea of where you stand, is it actual, and what is the nature of this what's the word? Condescension. Condescension, you probably heard people use it, she's so condescending. Well, that doesn't sound very pleasant because it looks like someone who is not wanting to associate with the lowly is haughty and is expressing the haughtiness in her associations, But condescension means to come down with. And that means that, you are down and the person who is up is coming down to you. The haughty person is doing it, reminding you all the way of their superiority. But when you are visited by a superior person, I don't know if you have any fame whores in your acquaintances, where people who love to be around famous people. We don't get many famous people around here, but when people hear something more notable is going on in Big House land, certain people just always show up because they want to be close to that. We know that when a person comes and talks to us, I always give this illustration. I was watching a documentary on people being knighted in England. This is back when Elizabeth II was still alive, and still doing the knighting ceremonies. And there was a Scots shepherd who was becoming a knight for his work with sheep in Scotland. Scotland's not a very exciting place. We're good people, but now we're not good people. Well, he was a kind of a charming guy with a lot of history with sheep. And he was going to get knighted by the Queen. And nothing could be more, momentous for an old animal husbandry guy to be kneeling in front of the Queen of England and having a sword tapped on his shoulder and getting knighted. So it's obviously she's much better than he is. And then when he got up after he was knighted, she started talking to him about sheep. Because they have lands in Scotland, and she has sheep, and she is interested in those things. And she condescended, the Queen of England condescended to talk to this shepherd, let alone knight him. That was lifting him up. But she was granting of herself the time where he probably reverenced her far more coming away from this moment, where the distance was even more vividly drawn because she closed it. We know our religion is based on God himself condescending to be with man. And we value him all the more highly because of what he gave up to be with us. So we have this element of knowing who you are. You don't have to become like what are they called? Youth group leader. Where youth group leaders try to be as much like these immature people as they can so they can be as fun as the other kids. And they think that's not condescension. Far better to be something that children admire, spending time with the children. Because they realize that if you're not constantly bragging about it, Leslie nearly beat up a Seahawks player years ago who was a guest speaker at a youth conference that we were the special music at or something. No, I was the speaker. I think that was the one that I was a speaker at, Northern Washington. And they had a Christian Seahawks player, I don't know who it was, so you can't tell me, who got up there, and his testimony was him telling these kids how much greater he was than they were. I mean, it was embarrassing. I had to hold Leslie against a wall to keep her from tearing this guy to pieces. So not that. Don't do that. Be great. Have your relationships that are higher than with your children be equivalently and known to be great, so that your condescension is valued and not resentfully. I have to go spend time with the children. It's something we want to have happen. We want it because we're nice. We want it because we're loving. But we know we're passing through levels like the stratosphere and atmosphere to get to them. And they know when you pretend to enjoy them and when you enjoy them. Is the attention they're getting just being attended to? When you have, one thing I had that section out of the essay on membership, very good if you can get it. I think it's in, they asked for a paper. But membership is something that we have in family when Lewis addresses the concept of membership, which he argues is essentially a Christian concept invented by the Christians. It's not complementarianism, it's not egalitarianism, it's not patriarchy. We are membered to one another in the church. That's how Paul describes the church, as individual body parts of the church. That's the idea of Christian membership. It's not joining the club membership. It's being a part of a body, like your hand is a member of your body. And so everything in your orbit as a family member or as a member of the church is that you occupy part of a body, and the children occupy a part of the body. And there is, like you, and it speaks of marriage the same way. Marriage creates a very direct membership between two people family is a membership that is broader. We were talking about nuclear family and the like. How far does your family reach? Because the people inside that belong to it like a body. And recognize that you don't hate your own flesh. Okay, it speaks to that in terms of marriage, but in Ephesians 5, you nourish and cherish it. So when you realize that your children have joined this membership of your family, including, Lewis argues, even the family dog is part of the membership of the family. And we do a lot for the family when you show affection to the dog. The dog seems to get off on it quite a bit. And your children get off on this affection quite a bit. Now, we had mentioned this before about giving good to the children. Where discipline gives a negative signal, a pain. This is the giving of good to your children. And you should consider that part of what you say when you're saying yes to a request instead of no. Because you're giving them what they would like. And when it says in the scriptures, Matthew 7, if his son asks him for bread, will he give him a stone? And a lot of Christian parents, well, yes, I would. Give him a stone. He wants the bread. He shouldn't have that. That's lust. If you then, who are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father who is in heaven give good things to those who ask him? Lesson on prayer, but you're supposed to at least model yourself on an evil parent who would still do gracious things for their kid, because it's what they ask for is not a crime. That's assuming it's not a crime. But there are things that would adjust it. You will say no at times because of when they ask, what they ask for, and how they ask it. There are the whiny askers, Ma. We got banned from saying the word, calling our father Dad, because we always said that way when we wanted something. Dad. And he finally said, I'm fed up. Yeah, no more of that. You're watching out for things that you need to adjust in them so that it doesn't just become a vending machine of pleasure out of you, that whatever they ask for, they get. We would sometimes the Walmart or something, and you end up in the toy aisle just because. And Graham was always asking for Army men and another bag of Army men to live and die at his will. And a lot of times we couldn't afford it. We're talking about $1.98 bag of Army men. And we'd have to say, we can't afford it. It's one of those things that we were really tight. And they have to be in a situation where it doesn't become a pestering, and then when you finally give it has lost all semblance of being an affectionate act versus taking your kids out, say, pick something. That, whatever you want. Another stuffed animal, Army men, whatever it is. So you have this opportunity to not just hug a child, but to purchase their affections with money. That's a joke. If you're having a hard time with these things. Now, one of the things we've run into when we started answering this question a few decades ago with some people whose lives were being ruined by their affection for their children. Not because it cost them too much financially, they had enough money. It was because the mom couldn't refuse the affection.
She said, I can't get anything done because my kids keep coming in and saying, Mom, I need a hug. She says, I've got to stop what I'm doing and give them a hug.
Right, she got to stop it, or read me a book. Stop it, read a book. Not getting dinner done. And we were thinking about it, because I don't think we approached, did we approach it with that person? Or did we just talk about it? You did?
I did.
Okay, good.
After she said to me, I can't get anything done. And I said, well, tell him no. And she said, well, I assume that if they're coming wanting a hug, they need a hug. said, no, not necessarily.
They're
They might just be
manipulators.
They might just be controlling you. But anyway, my thing is like with the cooking or whatever you're doing. When I'm done with this, I'll give you a hug.
And if it doesn't, a hug coming to you, coming from you to them on their request or demand, if it doesn't meet with your desire to give them that affection, it wasn't affection. They went and collected something that looked like affection because it was a hug, but it was that, it wasn't if you're viewing your affection as the state of your heart towards them surprising you with a demand for a hug is not turn out to be that. And you don't end up giving the kid a lot of affection because it's sort of like affirmative action. People know that affirmative action was done for their benefit, and then they realize that every black man at a Ivy League school thought that he was there because they were given it easy for the people of color. And that's a hard thing to deal with. When they realize their own manipulation was based on manipulating you to give them a hug, which wasn't felt the same way. They couldn't cash the check the way they wanted to. So you want to be really ready to give the affection that God has produced in you, your attentiveness to them, your love for them. It takes moments of real expression where they get loaded up. They're secure when you're not there. Sometimes they will be coming to you for the demanded hug because they are insecure about something, but they might not be getting enough in their minds. But you take that as a signal not to give it to them then when they ask for it. It's when they ask, what they ask for it, what tone they ask for it in. When they ask, you can say, no, I've got to get this done, because you want them to always know the height you dwell in so that you increase the value of your affection when it comes to them. I'll read you a book in half an hour. If they then get the kind of time and snuggle time that they really enjoy with mom or dad, they don't keep grasping after you. They could walk away from, could you give me a hug? Could you read me a book? And you can say no, and they don't start crying. It's not a problem. Another problem of affection is sentimentalism versus affection. There are a lot of, I suppose it's mostly women. I'm trying to think of ways that men might be if they're kind of sports and dads, and they have sort of sportsing performative tasks that they're trying to do, and that they're measuring. I never got to throw the ball with my dad, and so you're dragging your poor little Johnny out in the yard, and he starts to frustrate you because he can't throw or catch. Little Johnny's got a lot of problems. I don't know if you know this, but if you ever meet a little Johnny, and a mother very much sentimentalizes her relationship with the child. She carried it 9 months. She did all the things. I guess they do things very early in the child's life. Dress them, stuff, bathe them. That they start, just like the kid might demand affection, there's a time when the kid is desperate to avoid the affection of their mother. It's a don't touch me sort of thing. The adage, public displays of affection cheapen the relationship and embarrass others. That's just a great line that one of Leslie's boyfriend's brothers said to her, and about her relationship with his brother. Public displays of affection cheapen the relationship and embarrass others. Keep it in mind, because you don't want to cheapen the relationship with your children or embarrass them. That's what I have an older brother who liked to embarrass me by showing me affection in public. Never got affection from him in private, but he was going to put his arm around me, and because I wanted to be cool so bad, and that wasn't cool. So be aware that, and it's not that it's bad, it's just that if sentimentalism or manipulation or whatever it is causes you to dish out affection where it isn't something enjoyed, if you're attending to somebody in love, you attend to them in that which really is what attention they need. If they don't want this is just an embarrassment that mom is hanging all over them, you ought not do it, and you ought not need to do it. You're expressing your love, you're not purchasing theirs with the affection. And in a lot of cases, people are trying to live out a fanciful narrative they have about their family. They maybe watch Little House on the Prairie too much, and they want it to be. I think I mentioned that that family that the kids were all messed up, and they were pleading with me to tell their mom to quit being that way, being that spiritual way. Well, she was trying to live out a perfect Christian home if she could just design it and put everybody in their place and make them wear the funny hat. That would be enough to get at it. And your actual family is what you're living with, not your artificially written narrative family. I mentioned this earlier regarding the condescension, but mothers can step into this role as they step into child rearing. It's love your husbands and children. It's not love your children and talk to your husband occasionally on the weekend. Love your husband. That if your affection is running, you got a lot to do as a mom. And if your affection and your lot to do, you might need to talk to an older woman about learning to love your husband, maybe learning to love your children as well. But you certainly love your husband more or higher. And consequently, when the condescension comes down to the child after it skips over husband and wife connection, have it be high quality affection. You don't want it to be the residue of affection, just enough to play a game of sorry with them. I guess that's the bottom. I'm speaking from experience. I hate games. This has a lot to do, I think, when we have performative things that look like the kind of religious Christian attachment to family that we ought to have. And then we start reading the Bible, and Jesus says, "He who loves sons or daughter more than me is not worthy of me." Oh, not just love your spouse more than your children. Love Jesus Christ more than your children. And he puts it the other way in Luke, "He who does not hate his own father and mother and wife and children and brothers and sisters, yes, even his own life, he cannot be my disciple." You suddenly realize this is a little bit serious, this Christianity stuff. You understand why not many people practice it, because Jesus says very unthinkable things. But you realize that you're not dealing with a denial of love, you're dealing with a placement of love, that the lower these things go on the totem pole, and you still love them, you just don't love them as much as Christ, so you'd obey Christ first. Here is my mother, my brothers, whoever does the will of God is my brother and sister and mother. And that is where it begins, so that when your mother and your children and everybody, your wife, realizes they're not as high of standing, they think it means they have no standing. You're choosing but one or the other, rather than saying no. Hating your mother and brother and sister, etc., in your own life. One of the benefits I realized, I'd read this in various places, and I think in Lewis at some point, and I don't remember where, but describing love as turning towards and hate as turning away. That when you look at your family and you look at Christ, you turn towards Christ and away from your family. So, and when you listen to Christ regarding your family, he tells you to love your wife, love your children, and the like. So I'm doing it on command of the thing that is higher. I am choosing it above the things that are lower, and I have to have those structures in my mind clear, so that my affections, especially with affection, since it is so natural, people love to, the babies that have been floating around here, I think, I don't know how many, we lost count. How many were there? 3, 4? 3. I think that was 3 fingers he held up. I don't have my glasses on. Hang on. It was? That's Graham. Oh, yes, 3. One of the things that happens with affection, what did I was saying about snuggling with babies? Everybody loves them, So we think it's too natural. Realize there are these things standing next to it, affecting it, you affecting your affection by these things, so that you do this correctly. So you do this inside of Christ's design of the world. Remember, he made everything, and the better and closer you get to the actuality in your perception of it, the more wise your evaluations are going to be, and the better your decisions will be. Knowing the sinfulness of your children, and knowing what affection will do and how they will use whatever you offer, is your kids will look at the affection between husband and wife and seek to disturb it. Okay? I've been aware of little kids that push the father away from their mother when any affection is being shown to their mother. Like, dibs. I got dibs. You don't have any claim to this. Now, that's not pernicious, but there are sometimes they'll try to set one against the other, get one to choose them. And favoritism, since it occurs, is, and we'll address it in a minute, but it's something we could fall for. One kid tries to get the parental value and has to throw the other one over the side. Looking at it and saying what's going on is, do they laugh with you? Is there a greater intimacy of affection in the home outside of the public eye? Things that you wouldn't do with your kids in public because you're not performing for the public measure of your family health. You're doing it for the family health. So you're wrestling with your boys on the living room floor. Now, I still remember Doug and I used to wrestle with my dad. This is back when I was in high school, junior high school. And my mother would always come in and say, somebody's going to get hurt. And my dad got hurt. And then proceeded to not be willing to admit it for years. He broke his finger in this wrestling match with Doug and Evan. And mother had just said, someone's going to get hurt. And my dad was embarrassed by it. So his finger was just dangling like this. It just he couldn't straighten it out. So for years, he laid it down on tables so she would never notice that it was dangling. And I think it finally healed up some, but he confessed it later to her. But I still remember with very great satisfaction wrestling with my dad in the living room floor, Jackson Street, Ann Arbor, Michigan. There are things in public your child probably knows better than you do. They're measuring the cost of your affection. Go by their cost. Don't enforce something. At home, this goes to the saturation love thing. When initially they will push you away if you feeling they're needing a lot of affection because they're a few quarts low, and you sort of don't let them go. You just keep hugging them because they're fighting it because they're too cool for this, but they really want it and really need it. But you can be doing that in public where you're not in private. so that you don't have another aspect of it called their reputation seen by others. It's just them and you and your child. You generally you would go with the child in public. You don't want to infantilize your relationship either. And Leslie mentioned it sort of about. Did you have a thing about? Oh, you do have a.
I don't.
No,
you've already said what I was going to say, so it's all right.
It just has your initials here.
Undercutting me.
Yeah. It says right in my notes, undercut Leslie. Because that is what Jesus would want. Another thing, enjoy the stage you're in. Don't resent that they're not toddlers anymore, or infants anymore, or preschool anymore, or school age anymore. Yeah, they've got a great situation for you at the age that they're in. The verse I have is, when I became a man, I gave up childish ways. That's what they would like to see, is that kind of acceptance of where they are. We have a Wednesday night book reading, or had during the semester, and Stephanie and her son Anders would come every week. And Anders how old is Anders? 11 years old, and worked the room. Just really, all the grown men knew Anders and had conversations about something that he was interested in with him, because that was the kind of welcome an 11-year-old boy really appreciates. He didn't want us to grab him under the arm and toss him towards the ceiling, So we stopped doing that. Now,
Polly also comes.
Oh, Polly, yeah, but Polly's just a celebrity. She just. She does it. Polly's going to learn her place in a week or so is going to realize the new baby. She's got to split the time. Sarcasm, which is part of, some of your families grew up sarcastically. Others don't understand what's funny. And the word has to do with tearing the flesh, which my father would tell us all the time, and then ask us, where did we learn this bad behavior? And we would say, Father, from you. Because he was very sarcastic. And I don't think he saw it, because he was participating in sarcasm, as he should, in the way that sarcasm should be done, because it is tearing the flesh. In various circumstances, there are people, the first category is people who are not very bright. In other words, they don't understand the meaning of words.
Or the subtle.
Or the, you might say, the aside reference that is completely overstatement, understatement, whatever it is that somebody is using. And as I gave you the example of my father would tell people about how he would rock us to sleep when we were kids until he ran out of rocks. And people were horrified that Jim Wilson would talk about throwing rocks at his kids, and you throw rocks at your kids? And tragically, there are people who do not get jokes. Do not try to use humor on them. Don't try to use any humor, but especially not sarcasm, since its natural read is so vicious. It seems and sounds very vicious with them. The second category of a danger area is you haven't established the ground or the context of your love with them. Because that's what sarcasm rests. People make a lot of memes about this, how women don't understand, and they will say very nice things to each other in public and then say very gossipy, cutting things when you leave. Guys say awful things about you to your face and call you all sorts of stupid names. You are so gay. You are so fat. You are so, and then when you leave, they say, hey, he's a great guy. And oddly enough, the guy who gets the treatment of you're fat, gay, and stupid, he goes, I know they really think I'm a great guy. I wouldn't think I was a great guy if they didn't say this. Now, that's you might say the tacit contract of love that says, okay, you are free to speak, freak. It's been a long day. You can speak freely. A lot of people think they have the contract, but they do not. I have a section here out of Lewis, out of the Four Loves, that illustrate that, but in just a second. There are children who want to disbelieve in the love. They've already got a self underway, and they're trying to gain leverage. So they want to accuse you. They can see that the accusation of being unloving is available to them, and they use it. They know it wasn't. They're looking for a cause of offense. There are people who you haven't said the contract with, people are too stupid, and people who are using it, using your sarcasm malevolently, even though they do know. It was kind of funny.
Happens in politics, too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Now, in the Four Loves by Lewis, and if you haven't read the Four Loves, do. You would become a disciple of C.S. Lewis like I have become. He addresses here in the chapter on affection that there are families that think they've got this circumstance. It says, I hear a great deal about the rudeness of the rising generation. I'm an oldster myself and might be expected to take the oldster's side, but in fact, I have been far more impressed by the bad manners of parents than those of children to parents. Who has not been the embarrassed guest at family meals where the father or mother treated their grown-up offspring with an incivility which, offered to any other young people, would simply have terminated the acquaintance? Because they think they're in this intimate relationship, they don't realize that the contract has to be struck, and it's one of love. This contract, I have demonstrated I care, and we're going to say things that are overstatement or understatement, and they say things like he has them, quote, we can say anything to one another here. No one minds. We all understand. Everybody hates it. And he gives some, if you read The Great Divorce, other situations, he's written up, even Screw Tape. There's a degree of this kind of relationship where that they've lost the art. They haven't reached the level of deserving to use it, and then they don't know it's art when they get to it. It says at the end of the section, he arrogates to himself the beautiful liberties which only the fullest affection has a right to or knows how to manage. He knows that affection takes liberties. He is taking liberties. Therefore, he concludes, he is being affectionate. And that is an insufficient syllogism. You know, it doesn't cover the cover the bases. Now, I might be trying to favor myself because I'm a sarcastic individual and have been known to step into it any number of times. And those are places where, because there are things more than whether I'm allowed to be sarcastic, whether I should be sarcastic. I've known families where one child really responded well and rejoiced in the sarcasm. Not of their own parents, but like when we would visit, we were like shipped in sarcasm. And a sibling completely horrified and clueless. Bright person, intelligent, not stupid, just really the meaning of words, and that's all there was. Now, generally, I think that I have a little section here on why children like me, even though I don't like them. And it's because I don't like them. And they know that. They know they don't deserve to be liked. They know that they deserve nothing better than being called a punk at church by the pastor. And in that, I've noticed this with small children and with teenagers. I am the last person that should be allowed to talk to your children, little children, because they don't like, they love me for not liking them. Because they know that our relationship of not liking is a farce and facetious, And I'm just speaking everything in those terms. And so they think I'm the cat's pajamas. With high school kids, I used to have a Bible study. This is 20 years ago, with high school kids for a few years in the summer. And I would publish the list of topics for the Bible study and the flyer that we would send out. We'd get 30 kids. Leslie would serve them lunch. We had the Bible study, then she'd serve them lunch, and then they'd run around the yard. And I have some sample topics. How despicable are the youth? What's wrong with boys besides the obvious retardation? What's wrong with girls besides being absolutely clueless? You aren't very bright. We can fix that. You aren't ready for love. God has problems with you. You wonder if I know what I'm talking about. Guess what? Now, got 30 people there, and we would talk of these things in biblical passages and so forth. Because I think some people have children, especially either teenagers or young kids, have a self-assessment. If it isn't too self-esteem oriented, they kind of know. And when someone finally doesn't try to favor them, a youth pastor, thinking they're the wisest kids in the world, and you look at them and say, you haven't got a clue. You're a 3-ton dumb truck filled with 50-pound sacks of stupid. And it doesn't bother them because, we kind of are. Yeah, we are. We're idiots. And that is now, I use the term idiots. I used to call Davis, what's my son's names? Graham and Gunn. The kids were Davis and Michael. The idiots were Graham and Gunn. And I called them the idiots, and they'd walk around and introduce themselves as, we're the idiots. And they loved that. People thought they were twins. They were living life idiotically, and they walked through life with that pejorative hanging about. And I learned it from my dad, who called my sister double ugly. Now, she wasn't a beautiful woman, but she wasn't double ugly. Maybe just ugly. But she loved it. Now, at a certain point, Gunn and Graham came to me and said, let's be done with the idiots. Because they were graduating to a place where the charm of that relationship was no longer charming. And you should be, no, we're going to have the liberties of a sarcastic family. This it goes right into other mistakes we make in family, favoritism. You have that in the Bible. Isaac loved Esau. Rebekah loved Jacob. Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other children. And bad things happen. Miniseries, you could do a miniseries. Now, in the New Testament, we get these examples where family dynamic and dysfunction were things that parents favored. He plays football. I played football. I like him best. In the New Testament, we're giving that membership idea where St. Paul in Corinthians 12 says, those parts of the body which we think less honorable, we invest with greater honor. And on the rest of the passage, God has so composed the body, giving the greater honor to the inferior part, that there be no discord in the body, but that the members may have the same care for one another. If one member suffers, all suffer together. If one member is honored, all rejoice together. Your membership as a family has a similar function. So that as you see people in the family who are not in the same arena as you would naturally applaud, you've got 4 sons, 3 of them are sportsing, just like you were in high school, and the other one, he draws pictures. And he's not sportsing at all. Doesn't care to sports, and what's wrong with the boy? Now that happens any number of times that whatever you think is the weaker part, the dishonored part, in membership with your family, say, I got a balance for this. I've got to find a path of honor that so there'll be no discord in the body. The body doesn't limp because one leg has not been favored. Now, in the end of your affections for your family, because all of this, not only your righteousness and your adulthood, I didn't mention this in adulthood, that you're raising another adult, and at a certain point, one of the benefits we have now is all of our children, our youngest is in his 30s. How old is he?
Almost 34.
His wife doesn't know.
Yes.
His mother doesn't know.
No.
Neither one of you knew.
He'll be 30. I did.
You're awful women.
She's right. She's right.
Almost 34? Okay. Almost 30. Our youngest, almost 34. Consequently, we hang out with our kids. They are friends of ours. We enjoy them as other adults. This is one of the... Larry Lucas communicated this to me as he was raising his kids, kind of layered out in front of ours. And he said that the joy, he was informing another friend of mine about not having kids they had like quite a few, which kept mother in the nursery and father growing up. Now, there's no crime in that. Having a lot of kids is great. But he was pointing to what a joy it was for he and his wife to be able to grow up with them, his children, into their adult lives. Now, you all know the Newcombs down in wherever it is, someplace south of here. And Larry had a great book on child rearing called The Things You'll See. And that sort of satisfaction, you got to recognize the, what it says when you collect things together, aggregated excitements of older children. When you get to the end of their spiritual development and they become to Christ and they're serving God wherever they are in school or at jobs, and then they adult, and you in fellowship with them as adults. And you see the effects of affection, you see the effects of the discipline. Of course, you don't have to do those things anymore. But be aware that all of this is passing, and you're giving these things that you had strong affection for away to the world and to their history. And being, and I liked watching it in this last passage, Luke 2. This is speaking of Christ, and it's really unusual. His parents went to Jerusalem every year at the Feast of Passover. And when he was 12 years old, excuse me, they went up according to custom, and when the feast was ended, they were returning. The boy Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem. His parents did not know it. I liked it because he was 12 years old, right when spankings end. And but it's sort of a marker. Now, he was God, okay, brighter than you guys, brighter than your children. But he was really stepping into his own. He says towards the end, I'll be about my Father's business, and then he went and obeyed his parents, and his mother thought about these things, because there are lessons in this that even the Christ, it says he grew in stature and favor with God and man. And that's what you're seeing when you hit 12 and maturity lands, manhood lands in antiquity on a kid about that time. And Christ was feeling it, and your kids are going to feel it, and you should prepare yourself to feel it and not be grasping sentimentally after the affections you used to have. So, is that it? Did you have anything? Any questions? Okay. Caused no consternation, or we really stepped in it this time.